But first, let me please be thankful to and appreciate very much the work that ECUSA is doing here. You are volunteer, you are dedicating your free time to empower scientists in this country, to join them, to give them a voice, to empower them. And this, as a society, we should appreciate very, very much. And also, as Eva said, you are giving them a piece of home. And I think this is very, very, also an amazing job. And thank you very much for organizing this event. Also, I would like to be thankful also and to appreciate the great job that scientific community is doing here. Eva is one of, we saw that, she's a big example of that. I saw your passion, how you want to understand the world, how you want to explain that, how you are, in a simple way, explaining things that are very difficult to understand. And I think you as a woman also are empowering young researchers to go ahead with that and to embrace the scientific career. But you are an example. One of my favorite quote from Einstein is, an intellectual job is when he or she understands a very complicated issue and she or he is capable to explain that to the world. That means a great scientific. So congratulations for that, and congratulations of all of you for being here, for doing that job, because your passion is saving us, and the COVID pandemic was a great example of that. So thank you very much. And now, my name is Lorna Stratas. I'm currently working in the science diplomacy area at Spanish Embassy, and I will moderate this table with my colleague, Dr. Iratxe Zuazo. Thank you very much also for sharing the table with me. And I will introduce first our guest here. Eva, you will allow me to skip your presentation because Antonio did a very good job with that, but I said that, but also I just to give you a phrase, because we should present all the panelists here. You are a brilliant woman who leads the current science in your field. You are awarded, you are highly recognized for this, and thank you very much for your work. Now I will go with Dr. Juan Lama. Thank you very much for being here. He is a PhD from University Autonomous of Madrid in molecular biology and over 30 years of experience with human viruses, from polio, influenza, and COVID-19. I'm sure that you will have a lot of input about this. And this is one other of these examples, how scientific is now empowering us and saving us. Currently, he is the founder and chief scientific officer of Retrovirus. The company is exclusively specialized in the virology field, providing preclinical testing for biotech and pharma, developing antivirals, vaccines, and therapeutic antibodies, offering cell-based testing for about 12 different human viruses. Since the pandemic, the focus is on COVID-19, with about 75 companies servicing in more than 20 countries in America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. You are also an experienced grant recipient with over $5 million awarded for retrovirals, and routinely called as review for NIH Study Section for Small and Business Innovation and Research Program. He also is one of these big examples of our scientific talent here in California. And his CV is amazing, so I tried to summarize that, so I hope that I did well that. Our next guest, let me introduce to, Dr. Ernesto, this is the point of trying to be sustainable and not to having papers. Sometimes computers lose your discourse. I would like to present Dr. Ernesto Criado-Hidalgo. Is an aerospace engineer by the Polytechnical University of Madrid, receiving several awards with its end-of-degree project. Among them, the honor of being the first Spaniard to be awarded in the European Pegasus competition. His research career started with its PhD in mechanical and aerospace engineer by the University of California. Now he works as a visiting researcher at Yale University, focusing his research on the analysis of large biomolecules using the combined techniques of electrical mobility analysis and mass spectrometry, which intensifies his interest in the scientific career in the United States. Thanks to a grant from La Caixa Foundation in 2013, he started a doctoral program in biomedical engineering at the University of California, San Diego. During his doctoral studies, he also works in applying fluid mechanism biological system. In particular, he is involved in a project dedicated to understanding the movement of cerebrospinal fluid within the spinal column and its influence on neurodegenerative disease. He gets now currently a scholarship postdoctoral fellow for James Boswell at the California Institute of Technology. That's right. Thank you very much for being here, and of course you also are one of the examples of scientific talent in the exteriors and also researching this super important, very important topic. And our last but not least guest is Raul García-Gonzalez. He is a biotechnology professional with veterinary medicine background. He graduated in veterinary by the University Complutense de Madrid, has a Master of Laboratory Animal Science by the University of Philadelphia, and 29 years of experience, 20 of those in management of laboratory animal resources, veterinary service, research compliance, and regulatory responsibilities. He started his career in San Francisco almost 20 years ago, working for a startup managing the cryopreservation lab and vitro fertilization for Moses strains. At the beginning of 2003, he started to work to join Tech Rocher, having different responsibilities, and currently he is the manager of veterinary service. He combines the science world with the photography and visual arts, having a title from the City College of San Francisco. You are this kind of mix between arts and science. You find that unique. The work of Raul was awarded several times. For example, he was in 2015 awarded as Edward Supervisors of the Year, award by Northern California Branch American Association for Laboratory Animal Science, and has different publications and academic fields which show the existing interaction within the managing experience with the business, with the company experience, with their practice, and the academy itself. So thank you very much for being here. I hope that the presentation was according to your background, was very summarized, but we all now have this idea of who are they. Now we can start our discussion, but first let me present some data that was presented just some day ago for the Spectator Index. California's size of economy is valued on $3 trillion, the same size as India or France. Canada is valued 1.9 trillion and South Korea at 1.8 trillion. How this is possible? This is our question now. During this roundtable, we will discover the answer, going from a macro perspective to a micro one. But let me introduce just two main ideas. The San Francisco Bay Area, which includes Silicon Valley, has for decades served, as you all know that, served as the world flagship hub for technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. This status has been earned through a collaborative relation among the region's research university, venture capital firms, and technology and life science companies, which combined have produced a track record of revolutionary change and technology commercialization. Our guests here are an example of that. Parallel with technology, companies are developing and executing innovative business models, acting as an example for all the world. Positive and interconnected networks and feedback loops are sustaining the flourishing environment. We are here, we are in this environment, and now let's start the roundtable. My first question for all the guests, we can start with Ernesto, and we'll go in that direction, is from your academia business experience, what are the catalysts for the California's Bay Area success? So please, Ernest, take the floor.
Well, in my case, as you were mentioning before, my experience in the US so far is mostly academic. So I initially came for a 1-year stay at Yale University. Then I got a Lacancia Fellowship to stay here for my PhD. I started my PhD at the University of California, San Diego, and then I became a postdoc at the California Institute of Technology. So from my experience, what are the catalysts of the California Bay Area success? I think it's definitely the people. The ability that California has to recruit and retain amazing people in the life sciences, but also in the engineering fields is just incredible. And in my case, I had the dual experience of the aerospace sector, and right now I'm working more in the biomedical field. And they're similar in some ways, but also very different, obviously. Similar in the ways that they're heavily regulated, and different in the ways that I think in the case of the aerospace sector, there's a lot more collaboration stemming from industry towards academia, meaning that companies, in this case, aerospace manufacturers, encounter specific problems that require technology development from academia. And what I see from the biomedical sector is kind of the opposite. Is developments that first rise in the academic environment that then spin off to the creation of companies. Like I said, for me, it's the people. It's the people that you come across here. There are many factors by which people decide to stay here, and but yeah, I would say, to begin the discussion, that the most important thing is the ability that California has to attract and retain incredibly talented professionals. So.
Thank you very much. Indeed, you give us a very important key of all of that, and it's one of my questions, which was how California is capable to retain that talent. But I think that we will come after that, go deeper to that. Raul, please be my guest. Go ahead.
I agree with Ernesto wholeheartedly. I think the diversity that we have in the Bay Area is the main driver for everything that's been going on here. I think one day I was at work and I was like, I think I'm gonna keep track of every single person that I interact with today, that either come to my office or that I encounter in the lab. Where are they from? And I counted 25 different nationalities in just one day. So I think that the power of everyone who's here, who came in pursuit of either the American dream or just opportunities in academia or just continuing on with the studies. This is kind of like a bubble where you have all these amazing academic centers. You have Stanford, UC Berkeley, UCSF, and then you have the money. Let's not forget about the money. You have Silicon Valley, you have all the drivers, from Apple is here, Cisco, in terms of technology, everything's here. And then you have biotech. So, I've been working at Genentech for almost 19 years, but, it started with one scientist from UCSF and one venture capitalist. And then from then on, many of the companies that are around the area, they're spin-offs. So basically, you see this complete flux and flow of people going from academia to industry. Then they're like in this other company, they go to a startup, maybe they were a scientist in a large biopharma, and then now they're like CEOs in a smaller startup. So the flow of people and talent and the money, I think is what's driving that.
Can you also give two very important key? Juan, please.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to say the same. I mean, they both explain, and I speak for mostly San Diego, but this is the same for all California. I mean, California is a magnet of expertise from all over the world. You just have to look anywhere and you see people from so many countries and origins that doesn't happen, I don't think, anywhere else in the world. And then the second important thing is the money. I mean, we have all these funds here, all these companies, all these VCs, and that creates an environment where people can create. And once you have the opportunity to do those things, then you realize that you could do that everywhere. But everything clicks here to be able to say, oh, I can do this here. I have the skills. Many people like me around me, and I have people throwing money, and then you can do those things. So I think it's the key thing. San Diego in particular, we have a lot of, and I think the Bay Area too, but I could say that even more in San Diego, these interactions, I mean, and I'm talking about pre-pandemic area, when people used to shake hands and meet in person, and we used to have all the time, every week, multiple meetings of entrepreneurs, scientists, and that was amazing, and that doesn't happen in many places, and I think it's something very great of San Diego, and I know it happens here, but over there it was to an amazing level, and you could network, meet people, find others like, they do things like similar, and they have other ideas, and that makes things happen, and that is the key thing of California, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, I couldn't go to, many other places, but I feel happy being in California, and these landscapes and all the cosmopolitan these cities, and I think it reminds me of Spain, and I think that's a great thing too, that people love to be here.
Thank you very much. I just summarize your intervention with innovation is capable to unify diversity, to join diversity and to boost that, the talent of that diversity. Eva, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to say something different because they have just hit on everything, but maybe expand a little bit, because imagine that someone comes to me and says, you're a scientist, innovate. This has to come from something, and I think there's something about the culture of the United States, maybe even more so the culture of California, that has to do with innovate is think different. I think that this is a place where being different is appreciated. It's not always the case in every country where there's a certain thing that is considered the proper, the normal, everybody else that just do things different, they're weird, raritos or raritos. Well, here, honestly, from day one, from the moment kids are small, it's like they try to be different. So it is part of the culture, and this is I think is cultivated. But the other thing is this, because something has to be happening that comes with a spark from a position where you feel confident exploring things that are not the norm. But it was mentioned several times, the money is there. There's people in this country, for the history of accomplishment, that is prepared to take risks, knowing I'm going to put money in 10 companies, and 8 are going to fail. That's okay, because 2 are going to work, and it's going to be worth it. And that doesn't happen everywhere. Maybe here it's happening because they have seen it succeed, but these entrepreneurs, they know. They don't count on 100% of the investments. And that is what allows to take big risks. That means big new ideas, big new products, big new solutions. I think this has happened over and over in California, and hopefully will continue to happen. And then, of course, the people, the variety is just, people come from many places and feel comfortable because they can have different cultures, different ways of thinking about things, and that is appreciated. It is part of the variety from which innovation can come, from exchanging ideas from people that just think differently to start with. So, same things, but just, yeah.
Thank you very much. You also gave 2 important variables. One is not avoiding risks, not be afraid of fail, because everyone fails. You should embrace that. And
I'm talking about the people that put the money.
but also as a scientific also fails a lot, and you should embrace that. Because, and from this is how it's innovative.
This has to happen both at the academic, fundamental research level, where people have to sometimes fail in order to get somewhere eventually, as in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be risk, and some people have to have the freedom to be able to embark on risk because someone is covering their back. You're not going to end up in the street if your next experiment fails. So the money is where people have to be prepared to take risks, if you see them.
Thank you very much. And education, this is also how the education system boosts new talents from when you are at school. This is also a very good, interesting point of view. My next questions is also based on what you have, all of you have experience of public-private partnership. And my question is, what is the role of public-private partnership in the Bay Area? The last research management is showing that these partnerships are a source of innovation, but are they all success stories? What clashes can we find within this management system from your own experience? So we can start with Ernesto.
So I would say, because this is a discussion that I've had many times with friends in Spain, and it's a conversation that is recurrent and that comes back and forth. The difference between public funding and private funding when it comes to research in academia. And I would say, from my limited experience so far, that when it comes to academia in the US, the public funding is just gigantic. If you take a look at the budget of NSF or NIH, they are the two biggest funding agencies. That budget, I think in NSF is about $12 billion, and NIH is like 4 or 5 times bigger. It's the size of the budget of some of our ministries in Spain. So the money that comes from the government, or the investment that this country as a whole puts into research and development, is just, even when you compare it as a percentage of the GDP, is several times what other countries do. So I think that's a first. And then the collaboration with industry, well, there are definitely very successful collaborations from what I've seen so far, and very successful spin-off companies that stems from incredible ideas or intellectual property that originates in academia. But let's not forget, at least from my point of view, that there's companies are inherently for-profit, while academic institutions are non-profit typically. So I've seen some collaborations, but companies, whenever they invest in academia, they are trying to get something out of it, in the sense of, well, we have this problem, can you help us to solve it? And that partnership is very successful for both of them, and that is great. But I think the major source of funding keeps being the government and taxpayer money.
I can talk a lot about this particular topic, but it's more from what I see, like the trenches, like people coming to me because we're working with animal models and all that. What I see people from all over the place, and of course companies partner with federal agencies. You have people with NIH grants working in industry as visiting scientists and running projects. So there's a kind of symbiosis between them. And then I keep saying there's more the focus on, well, maybe this particular team or lab has this idea that could end up being translated into a drug that's going to be marketed for patients that could be like a blockbuster, or maybe not. Maybe it's one of those things that then it goes into this kind of like dark place, and eventually years later, or one dedicated scientist keeps working on it and eventually becomes like the center of attention later for something else. So from my humble point of view, it's more, I interact more with the people who are actually doing the work, but I know that the funding can come from many different places.
Well, I think the partnerships are important. Academia has two roles, I could say. One of them is that nurturing the people and the minds that most of us, we have gone through academia. I don't think there are many cases of biotech or pharma companies, established or created with people from the scratch without, going to college and going through labs, academic labs. There are some, but not many. And they have also the discovery side. I mean, some of the technologies that they were commercialized in industry, they come from academia, some we don't. So those are two things that academia does very well. And then from the industrial biotech pharma point of view, they create two things. One of them, as we said before, is the financial, coming also from VCs, the financial side, but also the environment. The environment of academia and industry are completely different. One is discovery. I was talking to your name, but we were talking about publishing. That's something that doesn't happen in most commercial environments, and the environment that you need to create in biotech pharma is the environment of creating and executing things. So they are completely different matters. Both are needed. The side of creating, putting together the minds, and the side of creating the environment or setting the environment to make those ideas or putting those people to work towards something to be developed. And I think it's great that we have both in California, and they are very closely working to accomplish these things. It is two very different worlds. That's something that is very critical.
So I want to talk about something that I thought was your original question, but maybe it was not. But in any case, it adds to the discussion. So when you said private versus public, I was assuming you referred to not in the context of industry, but funding from non-profit organizations that are private in nature, like the Gates Foundation, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, right now the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Jeff Bezos now has this anti-aging big consortium and things like that. And other things like the Pew Foundation, the Searles, the Packard, all of those that are people that have made a lot of money, that have some kind of a social conscience, and that put relevance to research, and that do not have the huge volume of funding of NIH and NSF, which is what really it sets the starting point for everything, is fundamental. But they have money that they can target as their own discretion, because NIH has to be approved by Congress, and Congress has 50 states, and everybody wants a piece of the pie, and the senator or the congressman from Minnesota or from North Dakota is going to say, what is my part? And there's some political distribution that has to happen. Or mandates of other sorts. But private foundations can decide to go for whatever. And they can focus on things that they consider to be important and transformative in nature. So the Chan Zuckerberg is deciding that they want to do things that have to do with, imaging at all scale, generate a cell atlas, so something focused where they inject a lot of money, knowing that then it's going to affect many researchers in their NIH-funded science, for example. So I think that is fantastic. And it comes from the fact that there's a lot of people that have made a lot of money here over the years, and maybe Spain is not in a situation to do it, but it also lacks the culture of people that get very rich and don't think of science and research and development as where they want to have their impact, and it's a real pity, because I think at a certain level this could also be happening in places like Spain. I think it's very valuable, and again, because it can be focused on things that are high risk but could be very transformative for everybody, developing technologies and things like that, or funding very young investigators.
Something that just came to mind from what you were saying is also, I want to touch on a little bit on talent retention and employee motivation. So, you are, I think a while back I was like reading, I was browsing through the usual Spanish press websites and stuff. And I read something, I can't recall all the details about it. People in Spain kind of like saying, well, it was kind of like unethical for all these people to get like stock options and things like that. It's like, and you're here in the States, and if you work for the industry, yeah, you love your job, but if you get bonus pay, or if you get like long-term incentives, and you're getting stock options, and you're getting all these things that will motivate you not only to do your job and do your work, but also to remain engaged and have some kind of participation in benefits, that also drives the whole thing. And we're here in the biotech hub, so you see it. You see this flow of people coming and going, and it's not only people like moving from one job to another to kind of like keep growing and getting better at what they do, but it's also that comes also with an increase in wages and all that. So I think that's something that we should all keep in mind as well. I don't know how that would translate in Spanish environment. I have an idea, but I'm not going to elaborate on that here.
Just
if you want to add something, go
follow up on a couple of things related to, I've been at Caltech almost a year now, and there's a couple of things that caught my attention very importantly. The first thing is that Caltech is the California Institute of Technology, and obviously for me as an aerospace engineer, it's like a dream come true. This is the place where JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, is. They control the missions to Mars and everything. Well, Caltech right now, and this is something that I didn't know, is investing a gigantic amount of money in biology. And it has since a long time, but it is now becoming more and more apparent, and in particular in neuroscience. They are investing so much money in neuroscience, and this connects with the culture of taking risks. We're talking here about an institute that was or became very famous for the development of a lot of aeronautical technologies, but right now is recruiting a lot of great biologists and who are doing incredible biology and incredible neuroscience. Now, the other thing connecting to what Eva was mentioning before is that they launched, and I was reading about this a few days earlier, they launched a funding campaign where they were literally asking for money from whoever wants to donate to Caltech. And it was called the Breakthrough Campaign. So this campaign ran from 2016 till 2021, and they had the goal to reach a $2 billion in donations. Well, the campaign ended up with 3.6 billion of money that were, collected by donations, and of that money, $700 million came from alumni, meaning that, and again, this is something that could happen in Spain. I don't see why not, but there's the culture of people really believing in what academic institutions and people who really innovate can do when they're given money, and also there's the responsibility or conscious of people who went through that educational process of giving back. And I think those two things are really important when it comes to why California is different in a way.
Juan? if you want to add something.
No, for now.
Thank you very much for this discussion. This is the most interesting part when the panelists interact with each other. And now I have two more questions because you said like all the key variables you mentioned it. And I'll ask my two questions before let my colleague to lead the table. And Bay Area, also California model, it's knowing because it's boosting the innovation from a region to the national with global impacts, being a model, a sustainable innovation model for everyone with taking into account these variables. And here are my questions. For example, just to take an example of how this has this model global impacts or how it interacts with other countries. One of an example I think we have here, people from Mexico, Mexico's model of innovation and its special connection with Bay Area make it successful model for international collaboration and scientific diplomacy between US and Mexico. The Mexican economy is evolving towards an economic model where technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship play a very important role, and with it, the transfer of technology between academy to industry. An example of this is that the Mexican consulates have become nodes to connect Mexico with different points of innovation within the United States. So here my question is, what could be the role of Spanish Embassy in promoting the collaboration about innovation hubs from Spain with innovation hubs with California? So if you can go ahead with that.
Wow, this is beyond my pay, right? Let me think. I think it could be a way of connecting. So sometimes it's difficult, maybe there's someone in Spain that wants to do something, has an idea, and it would be great to establish a collaboration with either a national institute, someone in a national institute, or someone at a company, at a biotech company or something like that. And sometimes it's hard to make those connections. So I don't know whether they could serve as a facilitator that bring together people, like in this context, bring some good, good wine, good food, and the panache of, an embassy is getting involved to make those connections. I do not know. I'm prepared for that. Did you send us that question? In advance, because I was unprepared for that. The question was there.
For a moment, I thought that you were going to be talking or asking about Mexico, but
it was just an example too.
I was going to tell you some things about Mexico, but my company in particular, half of the staff is in Mexico. So when we started with the pandemic, we didn't have a biosafety level 3 lab in the company, which is needed to be able to work with SARS-CoV-2. And we tried to get agreements with, there are many in the area, but they were extremely academic, so they didn't want to work for a company or collaborate with a company. They wanted to do their own research, and we managed to get a lab in Mexico. So we are actually doing all the work with SARS-CoV-2 in Mexico, which is 80 to 90% of the work that we're doing right now. I'm saying this because when we managed to work with Mexico, we found something that was very useful. I mean, you talk about Spain and the US or California, it has to be a win-win situation. So California has many things that Spain doesn't have, but I'm trying to figure out what they can get or we can get from Spain that they don't have already. So one thing is obviously the human resources. There are tons of very skilled people in Spain. The thing is how to bring them here. And by the way, the Spanish government probably doesn't want to, induce an exodus of scientists and entrepreneurs out of the country. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to. One thing that I was discussing with you is to figure out from the California point of view how to bring people faster and easier to the state with all the bottlenecks and problems with visas and things like that. So I was saying that it's very critical to be able to hire people from other countries if you don't have and by the way, it's really hard to find good people here. And it's very hard to compete with many of the biotech and pharmaceutical companies, everyone looking for the pool of the most skilled people. With all the turnover and people moving from one place to another, it makes things even more complicated. So that would be a great thing to do, to be able to import the minds from Spain and be able to get them in the country fast with some, as you know, if we want to bring somebody from Spain, we need to get them for industry and H1 visa, and they disappear, all the H1 visas in anything between 1 day and 1 week, seems like this April 1st. So that's a big problem to be able to bring people. Academia is different, they can arrive with a J1, it's a student visa, and it takes no time to get them, and there is no quota. With the H1 visas, it's a big issue because there's a quota. And it was reduced with Trump. It went up again, but still they go away very fast. So it's critical that one thing that we could be doing here is to bring more skilled people from Spain and other countries, and that is complex because of the visa situation. Other things, we can, if we come from Spain, we always have this tendency to think about Spain and Spanish food and going back. So that's another way to promote partnership with Spanish companies or academic institutions. And it's not easy. It's very different, the environment between Spain. And I get a feel of that. For some time we tried to get a branch of the company in Spain, and it was like a different universe in many aspects. And then you realize how easy and how great is to be able to do things in the US. Things that are so simple here, they could be so complex in Spain, and even Mexico, things that they take me no time to do here. This is a nightmare. It's like having a nightmare dealing with the bureaucracy in a country like Mexico. So we try at some point to get viruses into Mexico, and it was beyond this world. It was impossible to get viruses into Mexico because they block all the COVID-19 related imports into the country. So those things sometimes don't happen here. But being able to get human resources from Spain, find ways to promote these partnerships, which I don't know precisely how to do, but the skilled people is a great thing to be able to attract in Spain from other places.
I just wanted to add to something very important that you said about the H1 visas cap. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I remember reading the San Francisco Chronicle. No, actually, I think it was a billboard on the 101 from the Chronicle that said, H1 visas, if you don't get it, Alberta wants you, Canada. So basically, the province of Alberta was reaching out to all these folks who are like trying to get their H1B visa, and they couldn't. So it's like, okay, well, why don't you immigrate to Canada via province, which then eventually will get you there. But so I was thinking about, how the embassy would probably like make, kind of advertise the outsourcing part of it. It's like, okay, how you could like facilitate that part of the business being done in Spain if you cannot bring the Spanish talent here, which I think we've all figured it out on our own, and we ended up here one way or the other, not to mention other colleagues, but it could be probably maybe cheaper in terms of like wages to do business there with the same or even overqualified talent there with the infrastructure there. So like kind of like outsourced projects there, like you were saying, how the bureaucracy was like slowing things down. It could be so difficult there when it would be so easy here. Maybe kind of like working towards like easing all the conditions to make things easier there. Because I think every time I see someone say, oh well, you're actually from Spain, And they start, talking to me about the food and how much fun they had last time they visited and all that. But it's like, I would love for them to say, oh, you know what? There's this company, this institution running business, and they have this facility and we're in Spain, maybe working with the central government or with all the autonomies, and that it might not be factible to do business in this part of the country, but maybe, Barcelona, the Basque Country or something, will make it easier. So maybe that was something to explore, I'm guessing.
I'm sorry, I just want to add, I said we have like 15 minutes, and we close closing the roundtable, we'll be able to do a real networking afterwards. That's thank you.
I think your last.
I'm gonna keep it short. And in my opinion, whatever can be done to connect people is great. And this event is an example of that. Because a lot of times, we don't even know people who are here in California. I was blown away by Eva's presentation, and we do some cryo-EM in our lab, and I literally didn't know about her. So things like this, that's the beginning of everything. So I think it's great.
Thank you very much. We can conclude this part knowing that what is unique about the Bay Area innovation, it's not simply the volume or quality of the research, the amount of risk capital, or its large number of entrepreneurs, or the infrastructure, is the culture. I think the culture and the talent, this is our main two variables. So I will finish this part with 3 words: failure, collaboration, and investments. I think this is our Bay Area model and our California model, and we should try to replicate this also in Spain, because we have a great country for that. And most young people should think about it. I think our new generation should put a focus on that. So thank you very much for that part. I will let to my colleague to finish and to conclude the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for your answers. I had a bunch of them prepared for you, but I think there's no time. So maybe we do have time for questions of the
Yeah, we
audience?
have like 10 minutes more until 7.
Okay, so I have a lot of things that I think I could ask you, but I want first people to participate. So does anybody have a question that you want to direct to any of them?
Any question?
Have
Yeah.
you ever considered going back?
Eva, yes?
Yes, I did. It was heart-wrenching because it was an opportunity where I would have been basically living in my hometown with my extended family, and it looked very good. And just to tell you, if I had gone, I would have arrived, and then the crisis that just plummeted and ended with years of investment, where the science in Spain was, really climbing up, and suddenly was just the funding was just cut off. It happened. I want to mention that, but in any case, I ended up not going, and I tell you, there were 2 things. One is what is being said here about having a hub where there's so many people that you can interact with that really potentiate your own possible talent or your capacities is amazing. And I was fearing that even though I was being, bathed in money, I was gonna miss that. And just to give you an idea, at the time I decided to stay, I started collaborating with Jennifer Doudna on CRISPR systems. I continue working with her. We do cryo-EM of all of the different forms of CRISPR that she's studying. So imagine, that it would have been very hard to miss. But in any case, I want to tell you, I'm tempted. I'm constantly tempted. I'm not losing. I'm just going on sabbatical in January. I'm going to be spending half of my time at CNIO and half of my time at CRG in Barcelona. And I'm hoping to make connections, to find out, to test the waters again, because I'm not giving up. But just to tell you, something that is very important. Here, no matter whether a Republican or a Democrat is in government, and it doesn't matter the White House, okay, because Trump wants to cut NIH by 20%, but Senate and Congress did not let him. So there is completely partisan, there's bipartisan support always for research, especially biomedical research, which is the one that I'm very aware of. And they continue, and it has never slowed down. At some points it has kind of grown kind of out of control, but it never has slowed down growing. But at the time when the crisis hit, I had the person next to me had a person on sabbatical from Spain that I became very good friend of. At one certain day, he came into the lab and he said, "They're just taking away half of my funding. They're just taking it away. This is not, I'm applying and they're not going to give me the money. They have given me the money and I'm taking away." So I could not sleep all night thinking, who am I going to tell today that they're fired? You cannot do science like that. You cannot. And science is not something that you turn it off and then 3 years later turn it back on. You're wasting all your investment. People go away, either to other places or just get demoralized and find a job something else, and science moves on and you get antiquated. And this is the message for the Spanish government. You cannot just think that research is the one thing that you will turn off when the crisis comes, because who cares? It doesn't matter. Unless you just give up, because you cannot innovate, you cannot have biotechnology if you don't have research, fundamental research that is being done in creating not just resources in terms of products, but people, which Juan said it, is our big, this is a big capital, is human capital, is the passion of Spain. We get pretty good education in Spain, but then we have to be supported, and there are brilliant people in Spain that just got there, they did beautiful work here, went back to Spain with a Cajal or something like that, and then were left to die, basically. And that, it's just something that they are recovering from right now. And that's continuity is absolutely
I think
required.
that's,
And that's what I fear. I go and then they do this again. Like, no.
I think I totally agree with you.
Sorry, so many threats that made it back, and then just their careers got terminated, and then they were the most brilliant ones as well.
Yeah, especially that's what you see, that normally people, we have a lot of talent, and normally they tend to regard us as, España, paella, ole ole, and that's not only what we have in Spain. So I wanted to ask you, Juan, personally, sorry if somebody has, this one, you started a company, so do you think, first, how did you do it? Because that's something I think some of us also are thinking about. And the second question is, do you think you could have done that in Spain?
No. Back then, as I said before, if I think I could do that now in Spain, in Mexico, and many other places, but I didn't have the environment to nurture the entrepreneurial activity. It may be different now. All my experiences from the US, but back then I cannot even think about those things. That would be very difficult. How do you do it? You just get started. Perseverance. If you are married, you talk to your spouse and you say, let's separate something's going to happen sooner or later. It's a lot of perseverance. And I used to work a lot in academia. I think it goes by another law when I moved to doing my own company. You have so many hats to wear that it's crazy. But this is just to put the time, the perseverance. I don't even think it's the intelligence. It's more, go for it and make sure that you believe in yourself and you keep going and then you do it, because you may end up doing something completely different to what you had in mind at the beginning. But it's a question of the environment exists here, and if you just continue moving things forward, you will be the 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. But yeah, it's just to continue and doing things. And I thought about going back to Spain. Not anymore right now, but probably in the future, yeah. And I think it's gonna be. I think it's easier for. It's tougher for academia going back to Spain because of what Eva just commented. At the end, everything has to do with a country being able to sell itself. That they are great and they can get into debt and they can attract investors. And California has the power to do that. I don't think Spain has that power yet. Maybe in the future, but yeah, it's a catch-22 where you cannot convince others that you can do those things, and at the end the situation can be very dramatic and very critical when it comes to funding. But the human skill is there, and it's just to, we are all citizens around.
We scientists are very perseverant, so I think that's something that all of us have.
You just have to start some company so that whatever.
I would like just a minute to give a message of positive message. We should take into consideration also now the great financial framework from the European Union, the big funding that the European Union approved, and all this funding is going from Spain. Spain is the first country receiving this funding. And additionally to a good strategy, to good advisor, to a good focus on science, and I think now Spain is improving all of that. And if we put together this funding and we put together, for example, Spain also it's an example in all Europe, in all the world, how during the COVID the government was using and listen to the scientifics. How we have one of the greatest vaccinated rates of all Europe. So I think this is positive change in our country, and we should also take that into consideration, just like a positive message for that. Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay.
If I can just add again on a positive note, and about what you're saying is what the government did, but also is in the culture of Spain, in contrast to what happens in many places here in the USA. People believe in science. The people in the street believe in science. They believe in medicine. They know who to trust, what the right sources are, and this is not something that we should take for granted, because it has happened in the States and it has happened in places that we look up to. I don't know why, like Germany. Spain has done better in that respect than almost everybody else. So, kudos for us.
Thank you so much, the four of you. So we don't have any more time for questions, but I'm sure they will be glad to answer your questions now in the little food and drink.